Baltimore congressman and civil rights leader Elijah Cummings passed away at the young age of 68. There wasn't too much detail given in terms of why he passed, but according to multiple reports, the cause was complications concerning long-standing health challenges. He also fairly recently had heart surgery, and there are some reports indicating that the complications from that heart surgery led to his early passing. Now, he was an incredible lawmaker. He was a fighter. And just to remind you of what type of person he was, I want to go to his very first floor speech when he was elected into the House. This was the day that he was sworn in 1996.
And there's a poem that Perrin Mitchell said many, many years ago that I say sometimes 20 times a day. And it's a very simple poem, but it's one that I live by. It says, "I only have a minute, 60 seconds in it. Forced upon me, I did not choose it, but I know that I must use it, give account if I abuse it, suffer if I lose it. Only a tiny little minute, but eternity is in it." And so I join you as we move forward to uplift not only the nation, but the world. May God bless you all, and may God bless America.
Yeah, it was a powerful speech as he entered Congress. Some of the same players are still there, by the way. Steny Hoyer that was greeting him. And he was eloquent in defense of his own causes, but also sometimes in defense of his Republican colleagues too. So open-minded guy, and Anna's got more details on his life. And then of course I want to touch on the latter years with Trump in a second.
So let's go to the early years of his life. When he was 11 years old, he was attacked by a white mob as he was attempting to integrate a pool, and he had scars to prove it. He had a scar above his eyebrow, and he actually pointed to that scar and referred to it when Donald Trump fairly recently decided to attack him. And I don't want this to turn into a story about Trump. This is about a man who was a great member of Congress, who did wonderful things and really did fight for justice. Now, let me give you more details on his career. In 1996, he won the seat in the US House of Representatives. Cummings eventually served as chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus and as ranking Democrat and the chairman of what became the House Oversight and Reform Committee. I also want to note that he had a history, yes, of defending, possibly fighting for the other side when it made sense, but he was also pretty strong when it came to fighting that side when it also made sense. And this is a great video montage kind of demonstrating that. Let's take a look.
When we're dancing with the angels, the question will be asked, in 2019, what did we do to make sure we kept our democracy intact? Did we stand on the sidelines and say nothing? People say, oh, you're just messing with the president because you don't like him. It's not about not liking the president. It's about loving democracy. It's about loving our country. It's about making a difference for generations yet unborn. That's what this is all about. And I'm begging the American people to pay attention to what is going on. Because if you want to have a democracy intact for your children and your children's children and generations yet unborn, we have got to guard this moment. This is our watch. United States of America, we will not intentionally separate children from their parents. We are better than that. We are so much better. There are efforts to stop people from voting. That's not right. This is not Russia. What country is that? I've often said that our children are the living messages we send to a future we will never see. But now our children are sending us to a future they will never see. There's something wrong with that picture.
Last clip of him was at Freddie Gray's funeral, and it was a powerful, moving speech. And he was willing to put himself in vulnerable positions to fight for the right causes. And one other example of that was the fact that he was one of the few lawmakers who was willing to speak out against the war in Iraq. So according to the Washington Post, Cummings was among the minority of House members and senators who voted in 2002 against authorizing a military invasion of Iraq. Cummings said there was not sufficient evidence of weapons of mass destruction to, quote, send our young people off to war and thereby place their lives in harm's way, an opinion supported, as we all know, by subsequent investigations.
Okay, so I want to go back to when he was 11 years old. A woman comes and tells them, hey, they're in a tiny little pool in Baltimore with the other African-American kids, and says, there's a bigger pool on the other side of the town, and you guys can use it legally. You have every right to use it. And now they're little kids. They decide they're going to do it anyway, and people are irate, and they say, white people have rights too. We should have the right to be free of the germs of black people. And he jumps in the pool anyway. And eventually the cops in that case came and actually tried to protect the young African-American boys from the angry white mob. But the mob started throwing things at him anyway, bottles and rocks. And one of them hit Cummings in the head, and that's where he got his scar. But he came back the next day, and they came back until they segregated the pool. Later, he found out that woman who had told him about it was a great civil rights attorney for the NAACP, and that's partly what motivated Cummings to become an attorney. So it's a powerful story, and I think him and John Lewis have done amazing things outside of Congress, and we all owe them a debt of gratitude for the work that they have done in that respect as well. So look, you know me, I'm not overly fond of Democratic leadership, but there were people inside of leadership who were pushing in the right direction. So sometimes he would look for cordial interaction in Congress. So he brought Rashida Tlaib and Mark Meadows, who's a very deep right winger, together in the middle of a committee hearing, and he got them to cool off, and then the next day they hugged, and that was great as well. But he was pushing, as you could see in those clips, pushing and pushing to get to justice and the right situation with Donald Trump.
The thing that strikes me is that so he was eventually became chair of the House Oversight Committee, and that committee has kind of two functions. So one is oversight of the executive branch, and we saw a lot of clips there which were about oversight of the executive branch. The other part of it is oversight of kind of everything else, like corporate America, all kinds of investigations like that. He was a leader on drug prices. He subpoenaed all the top pharmaceutical companies. They had very powerful hearings in the Oversight Committee on that. He recently led a hearing that led to a defense contractor giving back $16 million in overcharges when they gouged the federal government. He was a leader on foreclosure issues and issues of housing discrimination. So his fights were not just fights within the branches of government. His fights were really with when corporations were screwing people in America, and he always had his head on straight with those, and he was always worked with Bernie Sanders, with Elizabeth Warren, like countless times. I can't tell you how many things I would get from him about some bill or another that he was working on with them. So it is a great loss.
And then he was also the leader of the Congressional Black Caucus for a while. And now I want to just get fully back into Trump for one quick second. So Trump attacked him after he was doing oversight, which is his job as the head of that committee. And Trump said that Baltimore was a rat-infested, disgusting place. And in reality, John Lewis's district is half in the suburbs. Of course, Trump didn't bother to check his district. Yes, some of it is in Baltimore. No, Baltimore is not a disgusting, rat-infested place. And obviously, Trump is saying that based on race. And so, but he partly called him out on that. But he actually was very mild-mannered on that. But he actually rose to the defense of the 4 Justice Democratic women when Trump said that they should go back to where they came from. That is when he actually called Donald Trump a racist. And he said, look, when I was a kid growing up, I heard that all the time, go back to where you came from. And there's no ambiguity about what that means. And so, of course, that enraged Trump even more. But I love what he said in one of those clips when he was talking about how we have to hold the government accountable and fight for democracy. That's what this is about. He's 100% right. It isn't about Republicans and Democrats. I know that everybody views it that way, but it's really about a guy who doesn't understand or respect the form of government that we have. He doesn't really believe in democracy, and Cummings saw that. And he's not a guy who's naturally aggressive. He was a guy who was naturally measured. But when the time came, he said, as you saw there, this is our watch. And I think that that is as good a phrase as you could have for this moment. And now he hands off that watch to the other Democrats. And I hope to God that they can live up to the charge that he left them.
And I do want to just quickly juxtapose the kind of person Donald Trump is with someone who actually helped Elijah Cummings in his life when he was younger. And this was, it just was really touching for me, and I really wanted to share it. It's the last graphic in the story. So this was reported by the Washington Post. The proprietor of a Baltimore drugstore where Cummings worked paid his application fee to Howard University, and during Mr. Cummings' time as a Howard student, regularly sent him $10 with a note that read, "Hang in there." I just love that.
Absolutely. Sometimes you do something that you don't know how important it is. But you throw a rock in a pond and it creates ripples. And so that pharmacy owner, I don't know who he is. I don't know where he came from. But he helped a young man who wound up helping the country. So thank you to him today as well.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.